Okay, so big week this week. I have got mediation for Jade's EHCP. I'm not going to get into too much of the kind of backstory and everything else, but let's just say if you've not watched my channel before, if you've not come across me before, you don't know me personally, nothing comes easily to us. That's the simplest way to put it. Nothing comes easily, and this is just another ongoing battle. Which I mean, I've known since he was but since he was two, really, that he was going to need an EHCP, that he was going to need additional support in school, whether or not he would even go to a mainstream school. So obviously, the fact that he does is great. Um, he didn't speak till he was three. It's always, when he was starting school, he could just about talk in sentences, but significant academic delays, and also autism. So there's a lot that needs, his mental health and everything else comes into it as well. To me, it's significant need. There is significant need. The reasons given by our local authority, which is Worcestershire, which is one of the worst, I think, for EHCPs. They have horrendous Ofsteds and whatever else, and so-called improving, but yeah, so the reasons given, I was given 4 reasons, bearing in mind this was a parental request, and it should be, well, I believe it should be different if it's a parental request. I'm making that request because my child has a significant level of need. What school are doing to meet those needs, yes, isn't enough. What can I do about that without having the LA involved? I'm not, in a position to be able to make school magically meet his needs. School need funding, of course, as well. Like, that's a big part of it. He doesn't have any one-to-one support. He's supposedly in small group the majority of the time. Whether or not that's true, I'm starting to question. I think, Jane tells me that he works independently a lot, which, bearing in mind he's only really just starting to read and write, that isn't, that's not okay. If he writes independently, you can pick out words, and if you know the context, you can maybe figure out what he's writing. He doesn't really put spaces and things like that, so you have to kind of guesswork a bit, or you ask him what it says. If he works with an adult, completely different, because obviously they help him with the spelling, they remind him of finger spaces, blah blah blah. So I think he needs at least 20 hours, a bare minimum. If he gets 20 hours to start with, I'll just about be happy. If he gets anything less than 20 hours, then no. I spoke to a professional last week. She came in to see Jaden last week, and she was quite horrified at the lack of support in the classroom. Which, bearing in mind, they know an outside professional's coming in, and they've known that for an amount of time. And they're always telling me that there is always a second adult in the classroom. He worked independently for that full 3 hours, and that was what she observed, which, I mean, she's seen him at his worst, well, not his worst, but, she's seen him struggle, she's seen him struggle to pay attention and all those kind of things. So in terms of saying, yes, he does need that extra level of support, I suppose that goes in favour. But yeah, I was quite shocked when she said that there was no a second adult in the classroom at all. Yeah, so she was quite shocked at the level, or the lack of level of support that he was getting at the moment. But she also pointed out that up to 20 hours of support he should be getting through school without an EHCP anyway. And then I spoke to Sendias, and they were like, yes, that's true, but that's not necessarily one-to-one. So they could argue that, yes, he gets a significant, a number of hours in small group, that if he's working the majority of time in small group, that would be counted as support. So there's so many grey areas where some people interpret it one way and other people interpret, that's why EHCPs, you have to be so specific in things, because any grey areas are just they will just take the mick and they will just do what they want. Although a lot of people say that happens regardless, whatever's in your HCP, that it'll be ignored, but we wouldn't know because we're not even at that point. So yeah, we are now coming up to 5 months into this journey, and we're not even started really, because obviously we've not even been accepted for an assessment. So this isn't it's not like that I'm not happy with the EHCP. This is literally, we've not been accepted for even an assessment. So if not only my background, he is 7.5 now, so he'll be going into Key Stage 2 in September. Significantly delayed academically, and he's also autistic. So there's mental health needs as well as academic needs. There's sensory needs. There's a lot. It is fairly complex. Significant level of need. I would say he's close to being 2 years academically delayed. Well, it is, because school would say he's working towards year 1, and he's actually closer to going into year 3. So he should be obviously he's coming to the end of year 2 and he's not even at the start of year 1 level. So yeah, it's close to 2 years. The reasons that they have given for not doing an assessment are, at least, I think there's 4 reasons, and I would say 3 of them aren't lawful. Well, even the 4th one, but they're not based on his need. Well, one says he's not at a threshold to trigger an assessment. There is no threshold. He has additional needs. That is the threshold. There's the old-fashioned, or like the myth kind of thing of like 2 years, or they need to not be making progress, or this, that, and the other. But in the law, there is no threshold, so that one we can discount straight away. The other reasons are based around what school are or aren't doing, which I find disgusting, because that's irrelevant to an extent, because that's not whether or not he needs the level of support, that's just what he's getting at the moment. So kind of like saying he's already being failed, so we'll continue to fail him. So the first one, funding. School have not properly documented where they've spent his own personal budget already, which is £6,000. It's really not where that goes. It's gone. Like, yeah, so he should have a certain number of hours of support through that, but £6,000 isn't really going to get you a lot, is it? Anyway, the next one, graduated response. I think that's called different things across the country. I think graduated response is again a Worcestershire thing. It's the plan, do, review cycles. So assessing, putting targets in place, specific targets, monitoring them. Yes or no that they can then do what they've. So it would be, can count backwards from 15. Like as old school, they were quite good with these kind of things. So they would have quite specific targets. So it would be something as simple as can count backwards from 15 to 1. A time scale that he's going to be able to do that in, or recognising numbers up to 15 was one of him at one point, that they were only working up to 10, and then they went from working to 10 to working to 15. So very specific targets put in place. His old school, he used to then have interventions with the Senko each week to work on not just literally those, but he'd work on that kind of level of work, and then after the half term or whatever, they'd review them, whether he was making that progress, whether he'd met that target, and then set new ones. His new school aren't quite so good with, when I've read some of their targets, they're quite like, one of them said that he'd have his ear defenders available to him. Like, that's not really a target, is it? That shouldn't be that should just be a given that he could get his ear defenders. Yeah, they're not quite so good with kind of specific things. And it's also said that there were things in his learning needs, which I need to go back through that again. He had a massive, I think some people call it cognitive, or it's similar to a cognitive development assessment that he had last year. There's a lot of things in there that he haven't put in place, but again, a lot of the things to be put in place, he needs one-to-one support, and it wouldn't be feasible to expect a teacher who's teaching 22 children to be able to do the things that are in there, because he, like, to be able to have sensory breaks, to be able to have things re-explained to him, giving him 15-minute processing times and all those kind of things. Like, it's very difficult for a teacher to be doing that consistently all of the time when they've got 22 children in the classroom. So yeah, that's 3 of them. And then I think the other one just said something stupid like getting outside professionals back in. That's what happens in an EHCP assessment. So why could that not be done as part of the assessment? So I'm very lucky that I hadn't actually previously contacted SENDIAS. It was only once the professional that came in last week, which was CCN, which again, they don't have that across the country. I don't know what would be similar. It's a specialist teacher, but like, I think the easiest way to explain it is like it's a level below. So it's not an educational psychologist, but they're similar to an educational psychologist, but they don't have the powers of an educational psychologist. So they make like suggestions and things around what they observe in terms of sensory needs, emotional needs, and all those kind of things, but they can't enforce them. So I mean, when he was in reception, he had one, and they said that yes, he needed 20 hours of one-to-one, and it was never put in place. And then I questioned it, and they were like, "Oh, it's just a suggestion. School don't have to do it." And I was like, so what's the point? But yeah, once I'd spoken to her last week, and she'd kind of confused me with all this. Well, he should be getting 20 hours without any HCP and all this, that, and the other. I rang SENDIAS, SENDIAS, which that should be the same all across the country because it's a legal thing, isn't it, that every local authority has to have. Yeah, I rang them just to kind of query where I stood with like the legal side of it all. And I was very, very lucky that I didn't even have to ask. She said, like, I feel like I should come to your mediation, which is on Teams or Zoom or one of those, so not physically cut, but yeah, we'll all be on it together. It's this Thursday, so it's getting closer. Anyway, I'm wandering off from my point, which was, yeah, so when I was explaining two things to her, she was like, it's a lot more complicated than just a simple, yes, this is the answer to your question. In terms of what school are and aren't doing, she said it would be a lot easier for her to kind of battle, which I'm really, really pleased about, because I don't want to feel like I'm coming up against school and accusing school of not doing this, not doing that, etc. Whereas she can kind of be a bit blunter because she's not involved, and at the same time she can make sure that the LA understand that the things that they're not doing aren't lawful, or their reasons aren't lawful, which they should already know. I don't understand how they've let it get to this point. I honestly thought that once they saw the word mediation, somebody higher up would read through it and go, what's the point? We may as well just give in because it's going to get ripped apart. But obviously the problem is mediation is only down to, they can change their decision. If it was in front of a judge, like, I'm completely confident that, and I mean it does anyway, I know, like, if it goes to tribunal then 95% or something ridiculous decisions get overturned, whereas at mediation, if they don't change their decision, then I'm looking at a 6-month wait for tribunal, and it's as simple as that. So to have a Sendias on my side is a huge, huge relief, and I feel so much more confident about it now. But it's 50-50, because as much as legally they're in the wrong, if they stand by their decision, there's nothing I can do until it then goes to tribunal, which, from what I've heard now, tribunals you don't have to attend. It's literally a judge will look through the paperwork in 6 months' time, and then a judge will say that's ridiculous and overturn the decision. It's the whole system is so broken. So in 6 months' time, we'll either be at a point where we're just about getting a plan, or, you know, on the way to get, timescales wise, we should have a plan in just about finalised, or we'll be going through tribunal and then it's another 6 months. So we're in May now, he goes into year 3 in September, and at this point I don't even know if I'd take him into school in year 3 if he doesn't have the right level of support. So like what happens then? Like, I wouldn't obviously withdraw him completely, but in terms of him actually attending school, I don't see how he could, because the jump from year 1-2 and he's with the year 1s to being in 3-4 and he's with year 4s it's so huge academically, the expectations wise, everything. I can't see how it would physically work unless school do put things in place which aren't in place now, regardless of having an EHCP, which obviously they should. I can't think about it. I just have belief that it's going to get overturned on Thursday, because if it doesn't, what do we do? We don't have the time. That's the problem. We don't have the 6 months to wait and then another 6 months to do. It's just, yeah, the whole system is just, he should have had an EHCP in reception. It's disgusting. But yeah, I will keep you updated, and everyone keep your fingers crossed for me, keep your prayers for me, whatever you believe in, which kind of positive vibes, whatever it is, that Thursday goes in my favour.